it was from that. And that was just the research I did for my first episode. So now I go all over Oklahoma trying to gather people's stories, like whether it's stories that they heard from their grandmothers, and then try to prove if they are true through research. I have expanded from Oklahoma. I do everything that I can find out about in the United States. I was actually going to talk about the Hex House tonight. But your friend, I'm going to say her name. Apollonia. I want to say Apollonia because of Purple Rain.
I'm glad I'm not the only one.
Like, I'm just like, that's not right. And then I keep trying to say it right in my head, and I am like, no, that's not right. She had a lot of great stories. I have a lot of good personal, I think they're interesting, personal ghost stories from when I was a videographer for a ghost hunting group. In college, I did broadcast journalism and a lot of film and stuff like that. And I ran the broadcasting lab, a very boring job, basically just helped people edit and checked out equipment. One day, a very spooky looking girl from Oklahoma comes in. So we automatically bonded because she was not originally from the area, went to school in Kansas. And she was looking to put up posters searching for a videographer to film ghost hunts and seances. And I was like, do not put that poster up. I will do it. She was like, well, we can't pay you very much. We can just, I'm like, I will do it. Like, feed me and give me a ride. I have all this equipment at my disposal. You won't have to rent anything. Like, I can just take it. Like, let's do it. So we went on all kinds of ghost hunting adventures all over Oklahoma, Kansas, and Missouri. So I'm going to stick to a couple of very scary things that happened in Oklahoma. Can everyone hear me without this? Because I feel like it's slowly creeping toward my... So the first one is spook light, which I'm sure everyone has heard of the spook light. You've probably even gone out looking for it yourself. There are a couple of different stories about the spook light, and most of them are rooted in native legend. One of my favorite ones is still kind of a sad story, but it's actually an Osage story, I believe. And it was about two lovers. They were from tribes that were warring tribes that did not get along. Kind of your classic star-crossed lovers story. And they ran away to start a life together. Both of their families set off in search of them. And these two lovers, running through the woods, realized that they were going to be caught. So they killed themselves. And the story is that the light is their spirits trying to find their way back to each other. There's also a story about a miner who had gone off to work, and when he returned home, he found that his family had been killed by Indians, and that in his grief, he took out into the night to try to find who had killed his family, and that the spook light is his light as he is searching. So whatever it is, there are lots of stories. There are scientists who have actually gone out to study it and who've seen it, so we decided that we were going to go out and try to take a scientific approach. So we rented pretty much all the equipment that we could take from my broadcasting lab. We also rented some stuff from PSU Science Lab, and then head out into the woods about midnight, 1 in the morning, the exact time that you want to, go out running around in the woods without anyone responsible. So we go out there, walking around. It's freezing cold. We haven't seen anything. It's spooky. We're in the middle of the woods. About the time that we decide to pack it in, we see it. What I only can assume is it was a light. It was an orb in the middle of the woods where there shouldn't be a light. We made sure that we were as far from the road as we could get, so we couldn't get, no headlights were gonna confuse us or throw us off. We hadn't seen anybody the entire time we'd been out there. It was unlikely it was a flashlight, so we are super excited. We're pumped. I go to film it, and my camera is dead. I look to my friend Joe, who came along with me. His camera is dead. Nothing is working. And I'm the kind of person who prepares and packs to the point where it irritates everyone else. Like, I have backup batteries. I've got all the tapes. Backup batteries are dead. K2 meters, nothing. Nothing is working. The second that we stop seeing it, all of our equipment starts to function as normal. Like, all the battery readings are normal. We have no explanation for it. So it was something that we couldn't document very well, because we couldn't film it. But it was I mean, it was definitely crazy. I didn't think it was scary. There are definitely times that I've been out on hunts where I felt that whatever was there was a negative energy, like a malevolent energy. I was not scared out of the spook light, but I was weirded out because even after our equipment started working, we tried to look around. There was nothing we could find that could be the source of the light. So I don't know what causes it, but I do think that that is one Oklahoma story that definitely has some stock to it. We ended up investigating a farmhouse close to Big Cabin. And the girl that asked us to investigate it, I was not a fan of. She calls herself a witch. She practices questionably, at least to me. So I was reluctant to go out there at all. She said that it was the home of her mother, but that she hadn't been there in a while. So I wasn't really sure what kind of state we were going to find the house in. It is in the middle of summer while we're doing this hunt. When we get to this house, and there's farmland around it. There's a barn that's falling down, and then like a pretty ramshackle farmhouse. We go in, and like I said, the girl had said that her mom had not been there in a while, but still owned the home and still lived there. There was no running water. There was no electricity. Like I said, this is the middle of summer. Nothing is working. No utilities are on. But when we go in this house, it's freezing cold. I can see my breath. And immediately I just get this feeling in the pit of my stomach, like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be in this house. It is one of the oddest houses I've ever seen. Like I said, there's no utilities, there's nothing on, but there's food that had to have been there like fairly recently, molding on the table. All of the doors have been taken off the hinges. That was odd to me. The way that the house was made, every room kind of opened up into each other. It was easy for you to see throughout the entire house pretty much. So we had people set up in different rooms. You've seen ghost hunters, you know how they do it. Our team leader decided to do an EVP reading in one particular room that opened up into a long bathroom. It was the oddest bathroom I've ever seen. It looked like a long hallway. The way this house was put together did not make any sense. So we were sitting in this room, and I was sitting beside the doorway that led to the bathroom. I said, all the lights are off. There's no sound because we're in the middle of nowhere. And Doug, our team leader, starts with the usual, is there anyone here that would like to communicate with us? Asking all the questions. The room just gets colder. But I'm sitting here filming. Everything's going like as it should be. And then we hear a footstep. And immediately, just the hair on the back of my neck starts to stand up. And it was like your friend was saying, you could feel a presence. It's not something that you can explain. You just feel the presence of someone near you. And Doug continued to ask questions, and we continued to hear the footsteps come down the hallway, right where my back was to the hallway. And I did the thing that you were never supposed to do as I continued to hear it come closer and closer. I shut off my camera and jumped up and ended the whole seance, much to everybody's anger. I just jumped up and was like, nope, I'm done. I feel it. It's in there. You got it? You guys could continue this. I feel like we got all we need here. So, and like I said, that was in Big Cabin. We got a lot of weird. Here's the thing with ghost hunting. I've experienced things that I think are ghosts, but you can never tell. The audio you get from EVPs, depending on what kind of mood you're in, sometimes you can hear something and you might go back and listen to it later and you don't hear it. I definitely heard things on our audio from that hunt that made me uncomfortable. But, we never really found a reason for the activity in the house. And as far as I know, that lady and her crazy mom still own the place. I never went back there again, never talked to her again. Last story I'll tell because I have to get home to my babies. So, like I said, I am a writer. I really speak a lot better when I'm not looking directly at people. When I'm looking at a microphone instead, I notice. So I like to write more than I like to get out in front of people, for sure. And I was raised in a very strict family. Very hellfire and brimstone. Hell and demons were a very real part of my Sunday school and my childhood, and they have always scared me. So that is what I wanted to write a novel about. I thought that was the scariest thing I could think of. So I have a friend who is Muslim, and she said that she thought it would be interesting for there to be a novel about demonic possession and exorcism from the point of view of Islam, because usually you just see, the Catholic point of view. You got the rite, you've got the exorcist and everything. So she started helping me, and we started going down this rabbit hole of research, and I was very into it. I had written like the first few chapters. I had gotten a hold of a lot of spell books, and a lot of text that I probably should not have. I thought I was being careful. Again, I was part of a ghost hunting group, so they had special prayers, they had special relics, sage, smudging, different things that I tried to do to keep myself safe. I thought that because I didn't really necessarily believe in what I was writing at the time, and I didn't believe in that religion, that I was fine. I didn't really think much of it until weird things started happening around my house. At the time, I lived with my then boyfriend and 2 roommates, and we had 2 cats, Bella and Wee Man, the loves of my life. And they slept with me, without fail, every night in my room. They always lounged in there. They would fight over who got to sleep on my pillow. And after I started research on this book, they started acting weird about my room, which was, of course, where all of these texts and all of the spell books I was looking at, where they were at. They wouldn't sleep in there. They would avoid my room entirely. If I tried to pick them up and throw them in there, they would yowl and hiss at me and run out. They just wouldn't sleep there anymore. One night, we were all sleeping, and I woke up. It was around 2:30, 3, and it smelled like the house was on fire. Just smoke, just the thick smell of smoke. I woke up to check it out. My roommates were up. We looked all over the whole house, top to bottom, looked in the basement, went outside to see if someone was burning leaves or cooking out. There was nothing. But inside the house, particularly in my room, it smelled like the place was on fire. So just weird things like that. Your typical scratching in the walls, like knocking, oh, it's just the house settling, it's an old house, which it was. And I continued my research. And then one morning, I was getting ready for class. I had to be there at 7 a.m. I was up very early. I had just gotten out of the shower, actually. The important part of the story, the embarrassing part of the story, is that I was naked. So I was in my bathroom, going about my business. And all of a sudden, I just did not feel right. I felt sick. I felt dread in my stomach. And again, I just got the feeling that someone was standing right in front of me. And again, just my whole body went cold. I felt like I was going to throw up. Every hair was standing up. And whatever was there spoke to me. And to this day, the voice that it spoke with, I'll never be able to replicate. I've never heard anything like it before or since. It was so deep, such a guttural sound. And the way it was speaking, I couldn't understand what it was saying, but I knew that it meant something. It was speaking like a language. All I know is that when it talked, I was absolutely filled with hopelessness and absolute horror. I immediately started to scream, which I'm not really a screaming person. I screamed, I threw the door open, I ran through my house, no care that my male roommates were up and about, just butt naked, running through the house, screaming. I grabbed my coat, I sat in my car, I called my professor and told him I wouldn't be there, and I didn't go back in the house for 2 days. After that, I got my group to come over. We did a whole cleansing of the house. They took the books to a home where they would be safe, away from my house. I stopped work on that book project, and then I haven't had any problems since. I still have the project. My husband still thinks I should finish it because he thinks it's really good, but especially now that I have children, I haven't wanted to touch it. I haven't messed with it, haven't done anything with it since, but when they say be careful what you're messing with, even if you don't take it seriously, even if you don't, there are things that you should not mess with. I feel like exorcism and demons and voodoo, which that's a story for another time, but don't mess with that either. But if you like stories like that, and you want to hear stories from me where I don't sound so frazzled and nervous, definitely check out Southern Grimoire. And again, if you're looking for spooky jewelry or home decor for your lady, then I'm a girl. So,
Thank you so much.
thank you. Thank you so much, guys. Good luck, Pete.
Thanks, Katie. I like this. It's like an almost Hydra. Sort of.
It's 2/3 of the drum.
2/3, yeah. All right. I'm going to play a song by Split Ends. It's from 1976, 77, something like that. And it is called Charlie. Charlie, rise and shine. For the sea I've drawn a blind. Sunlight, halo, you look wonderful, darling. Charlie, pale and deathly still. For heaven's sake, wake up, Charlie. Full moon, last night I was full of bravado. Dead drunk, dead sure, one of us had to go. Raise my hand in anger, hurt you again. Dust to dust and fire to ashes. You can thank me for nothing now, Charlie. I was beaten up with jealousy, bones to pick and rumors to be. How my heart beats, love's a big mistake. Mercy, Charlie, oh, for pity's sake, forgive me, speak to me, Charlie. I got for tonight. So
That's enough.
thanks. That was really fun seeing Lainey and everybody so far.
Okay, if you guys are up for it, I am the last storyteller, so let me grab my phone where I have my notes. So I decided to talk about a local murder. Cheerful subject. Is anyone familiar with the Jameson family disappearance of 2009? They're from Lake Eufaula area, and it was a mother, a father, and their 6-year-old child that disappeared in October of 2009. The father and the mother were going out to buy some land to look at 48 land in the Red Oak area of Oklahoma. It's about 30 miles away from Eufaula. And when they got there, the first time they got lost, they asked someone for directions, they turned around, they went home. And they went out again the next day, and they disappeared. So no one had heard from them for a few days, which wasn't that unusual for them. They were kind of kept to themselves. People had noticed in the weeks preceding their disappearance, they had lost a lot of weight. They were always kind of standoffish to the neighbors. So Bobby Dale, age 44, he had had a car accident a few years before, a lot of chronic back pain. He was on disability, struggling to make ends meet. That'll become important a little bit later. Sherilyn Leanne, age 40, the mom, bipolar, often didn't take her meds, had a son from a previous marriage who was living with his father again at the time of their disappearance. And then Madison Stormy Starr, age 6, what a name, right? So the family disappeared on, I think, October 8th, 2009. 8 days later, hunters half a mile away found their truck abandoned and locked with the family dog inside, starving but still alive. And the bed of the truck had standing water in it from recent rains. Inside was Bobby's wallet, Sherilyn's purse, all of their jackets, all of their cell phones, and under the seat, in a bank bag, $32,000 in cash. Granted, they were going to look at buying land, but both of these people were on disability. Where the mother-in-law of Bobby said she couldn't imagine where they had gotten the money from because she had known for a fact there had been no settlements from the car crash, even though Bobby was suing 3 people from that accident. So inside Bobby's cell phone, there was a photo of Madison, the daughter, taken the day before they vanished. Around the truck, no signs of any struggle, nothing, no broken glass, no, scuffling of footprints or anything like that, no blood. The Latimer County Sheriff, Israel Beecham, said that he thought they were forced to stop and get out of the truck to meet with someone they recognized. And either they left willingly or they left by force, which is kind of like, yeah, they either did A or B. That's kind of obvious. So the GPS led police up to a hill nearby where they found footprints. So they speculated that they had gone up to the property, looked around, then gotten back in their truck, and then driven just a few miles where the truck was then abandoned for some reason. So 4 years later, November 16th, hunters found partial skeletal remains of 2 adults and 1 child. They were found less than 3 miles as the crow flies from where the truck was found, although with going over all the rough terrain because it's in the mountains, on foot, more accurately, it'd be about 7 miles. They were positively identified on July 3rd, 2014. The bodies were found face down, carefully placed side by side. So this wasn't just someone killed them and then they were laying willy-nilly. Some people kind of theorized that the mom, who had gone off her meds, had done like a murder-suicide, but for the bodies to be face down and laying side by side, that doesn't really make much sense. Someone else would have had to have moved those bodies. And I don't really see someone who didn't kill them coming along and doing it later. So the state medical examiner, Dr. Joshua Lanter, said the cause of death was unknown because of the incomplete remains and the damage done by wild animals, because they were out there for 4 years. There was a missing briefcase and a missing .22 handgun registered to Sherman. Neither was ever found. Both adults were unemployed and, as I said, on disability. Sherilyn's mom said she didn't know where the money had come from. There was some footage that they found on their security cameras that they had outside their own home of them packing up to leave for the trip. It shows them slowly loading up the truck as if in a trance, not talking, not interacting with each other at all. Sheriff Beecham once again says, all things are possible. So here's some main theories. That they wandered off, got lost, and died of hypothermia, except for it never got below 40 degrees on any of the nights that they were missing. Murder-suicide. Inside the truck was an 11-page hate letter from Sherman to Bobby. It was said that the family was obsessed with death. Apparently Sherman was into kind of spooky stuff, but the mother-in-law doesn't believe it, and she said she lived with them, and even though there's an 11-page letter of Sherman describing all the ways she hates Bobby, she claims that she was still madly in love with him, and that was just something she did to kind of get her aggression out. The other theory is that they were killed by Bobby's father, Bob Dean Jamison. Apparently, months earlier, Bobby had filed a restraining order against his father. In November and April, Bob Sr. had threatened to kill the entire family. Bob hit Bobby with his car on November 1st, 2008, and Bobby told the police that his father was a very dangerous man who was into all kinds of bad stuff, prostitutes, meth, and gangs. A judge dismissed the restraining order in May of 2009. Bobby Jr. was also suing his father over money he had been promised for working at Bob Sr.'s convenience store, which he owned, at the time of the family's disappearance. The sheriff called the Jamisons scammers because Bobby was also suing 3 other people because of the car accident. But Bob Dean died in December of 2009, just a few months after they disappeared. So they never really were able to get anything out of him. The uncle was suspected for a second because he had recently cut everyone out of his will except for Madison, the young girl. But he had been cleared. People also thought they had been murdered by a cult, possibly a white supremacy group. The best friend, Nikki, said that an anonymous woman had called her and claimed that the family was on a secret hit list for the white power group United White Knights. Later, she dismissed this claim, saying that it wasn't true. In 1993, an article in the Oklahoman said that there wasn't really that much cult activity around the area and hadn't been for a few years. Although locals say that the area is known as a hub for white power groups and meth dealers. And there are also claims that Bobby dropped a dime on a meth dealer. So there was also found in the truck a prescription pill bottle belonging to a former roommate of theirs, who back in July said that anyone who was of pure white blood deserved to die. So Sherilyn was part Native American, and she took this as a direct threat to her and her daughter. So she pulled a gun on him and told him to leave, and even fired warning shots at him, and told him never to come back. And she confided in, once again, Nikki, that she had never fired a gun before, and it really upset her. Police traced this guy to Wilburton, Oklahoma, but he had a solid alibi, and police have cleared him as a suspect. And finally, they talked to the landowner whose land the family went to go see. He claimed that other than the family, he never saw anyone else go up or down the mountain that day or the day after. And he also offered to help the police in any way that he could. So in the weeks leading up, they lost a lot of weight, they sequestered themselves. They had recently taken their daughter out of public schools to homeschool her. They had security cameras outside of their house. Even though the sheriff claims that there was no cause to suspect drug involvement, all of those signs kind of clearly, make a picture of like meth abuse and possibly, dealing meth or being the money man for somebody. So another thing the police looked into is Sherilyn owned a witch's Bible that the best friend Nikki said they bought as a joke weeks beforehand. Sherilyn was unconventional. She openly told her mother she was a witch. When a neighbor poisoned one of her cats, she left a graffitied message onto one of their shipping containers. Apparently everyone out in the country has shipping containers sitting in their yards, the Jameson family included. She wrote, 3 cats killed to date by people in this area. Witches don't like their black cats killed. Friends think that she did it more to keep people away from her property, since she didn't like to be bothered, than as an actual threat. Bobby told their preacher he was reading a satanic book, maybe the Witch's Bible. He also said that they suspected they had 2 to 4 ghosts in their home, very specific, and that angels were communicating with Madison. He also asked the preacher about special bullets that could shoot spirits. And the pastor described their disturbances as them going through some kind of spiritual warfare. The sheriff denies any evidence of drug use or sale of drugs. And the sheriff says there are still no suspects. So I have a couple of theories from researching this. The money, it's obviously drug money. Bobby said his dad had gang connections, which would mean that Bobby probably had some too. One theory is that he figured he could steal the money, move the family to some hidden land, and they would hide out. They had told people they were going to move their storage container onto that land and live inside of it. The sheriff, who said there's no evidence of drug use, but there's a pill bottle in the truck, and Bobby had chronic back pain. It stands to reason that maybe there were pain pills. The sheriff also said there was no obvious suspects, yet Bob Sr. seems like a pretty obvious suspect. Unless, of course, the sheriff was part of Bob Sr.'s gang of drug dealers. So when I'm thinking about who they would pull over off the side of the road for, that they wouldn't question it or be suspicious, a police officer comes to mind. What better way to get them to pull off the side of the road without questioning it? Also, the sheriff, he's young, military. He quit his job soon after this and went back into the military as a mercenary to train soldiers to be mercenaries. So he had spent his life in the military from age 18 on, which, I don't know, it makes sense to me that he would have the capability to do something like that, being a mercenary. Also, the sheriff was the one leading the search for them. In the days that they were missing, over 100 people scoured all of that area, and the bodies were not found very far from where that truck was, but yet they weren't found until 4 years later. The sheriff called off the search after 1 day, claiming that the terrain was too hazardous for people. So he would also control where people went, so he could make sure that nobody went in the specific area where he knew the bodies were. Also, if they confiscated everything that was in the truck, including the $32,000, in local jurisdictions, depending on what their laws are, most part they follow the same laws as the federal laws, that some of it goes to the area that they made the arrest in, with all, drug money that they confiscate, things like that. And in some form of like paying for community services and such, and the lion's share goes to the arresting police department. So this is a very small police department. It wouldn't be very hard for him to embezzle that money back into his own pocket. So I looked a little further into it, and I don't know this guy, I don't know any of these people. This is just kind of like my off the top of my head theory from looking at it for a little bit. If anyone is related to a sheriff or someone in the military, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to offend anybody. It's just kind of the little puzzle pieces that I put together from this. But to this day, the case remains unsolved. Nobody has any clue what happened to them, why it happened, and I don't know, just something I found kind of interesting. So thanks for listening. And I think that's it. I think that's it for the night. So one more musician, and then we're gonna call it good.
Hey, that was a good story. I just have a death song.
That's
I
good.
came to hear the stories though. That was a good one. One and 20 does not make 3. Still you make a fool out of me. I could stab you 1, 2, 3. Cross your throat, bring you down to your knees. Oh, yeah. Dance all day, scream at night. It would be mine with all around it were a frown. Just to stand by your graveside. It would be my delight. 1 and 20 did not make 3. Still you made a fool out of me. Yes, I stabbed you 1, 2, 3. Crossed your throat, brought you down to your knees. I